Salam, salam. Inshallah, everyone is doing well. Alhamdulillah, I'm holding my copy of Gate to Medina. I'm really grateful, of course, to the Almighty and then to all of you for helping me get to this stage, and for those who have bought the book, who have read the book, starting the conversation. Before I forget, if you have the book or if you've read it, I'd really appreciate it if you can leave some kind of comment or review on Amazon. Hopefully positive, but be honest, because those reviews are very important for kind of the success of this writing project and the success of future writing projects. Anyway, this is sort of the last of the three kind of videos I had intended with the kind of my pathway or my journey to how I got to the Gate of Medina project. I was reviewing the last video, and I do sense that I was kind of rambling, so I don't want to ramble, but I wanted to focus on a few things for you. One is kind of high level, and then a couple of kind of minor points, and then I'll just leave you to it. The art of Islam, which is really what this book is aimed at addressing, and I kind of talked about it in the last video. That's the second half of the book, and the two halves are sort of equal in length. It was impossible, I felt, and I still feel it's impossible to explain the art of Islam without explaining the false versions of Islam and the gap that those false versions have created between us and real or a beautiful Islam. So that's kind of why I decided to write the book. Like there are like too many books or too many topics in one kind of overarching theme. The art of Islam, I really hope that you read that with some care. I think the first half of the book with Islamology, it's a little kind of, you're familiar with that, with those, unfortunately, with those gross examples of Islam. The art of Islam is a little bit more delicate. I think it requires a little bit more thinking. I try to be heavy with my kind of using arts and literature, great literature and great art to highlight my point about inspiration and to show you how the mujtahid figure who kind of is summarized in the person of Imam Ali alayhi salam. I mean, that's from where the title of the book comes from, The Gate to Medina. Imam Ali is the gate alayhi salam, as the Prophet ﷺ indicated. That mujtahid figure with the dual skill set of mastery and spiritual depths and spiritual realization, that's the artist. That's the artist that Islam produces. And even if you're not at that level of mastery and you're like an independent mujtahid, hopefully you can aspire that your Islam creates that in you and that you yourself become a manifestation of the art of Islam. That's sort of where I'm going. The second half is really special to me. The first half is an older kind of, from older writings and older kind of discussions I've had. But the second part, I think, is where my unique contribution is to the discussion. That's the macro level. On the micro level, I do want to highlight that it's important that you read, I think, the quotes. So in the opening, before the content section, I have these two opening quotes, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that I am the city of knowledge and Ali is its gate, and then this very famous quote from the Odyssey, from Homer's Odyssey, about the two gates to the city. And each section, each chapter, that is, I start with a quote. So part one, the great gap, Islamology and the meaning of fake Islam. You'll find a quote here, by Ibn Muhammad ibn Sirin, rahimahullah, and so on and so forth. Those are not chosen randomly, and they're not there as fillers. They are significant. So I hope that you're not like I used to when I was younger, and when I would open a book like this, I would skip over those things and I would skip over the poetry. But we don't want to do that, and I hope you don't do that. And those quotes, I think, are very important. These quotes are important because they summarize what the following chapter is going to be about. So pay attention to them. Also, in my last book, In Search of Mindfulness, there were 0 footnotes and 0 bibliography, and I kind of explained why I did that. That book for me, as I wanted to create something for younger people that was easy for them to read, that it's not cumbersome. But this book is a little bit different because some of the arguments are very heavy, especially when I talk about the differences between Christianity and the kind of what the later day European Christianity became, how it's different from our paradigm. I think those things require footnotes. I tried my best not to overload them, but I don't want you to think that I'm just making these claims. I'm just kind of speaking, without thinking. So that's why they're there. And then because there are footnotes, of course, there's going to be a bibliography at the end of the book, so it's academic style bibliography using, the standard protocol, and there's also an index. So those things are important if you want to track down the arguments. You don't have to look at you don't have to look at the footnotes if you're not, academically inclined, and if you trust me or if you trust the argument. But for those who are like, I don't think Plato said that, or I don't think, that reference on extremism is correct, I have those footnotes there for you, so you can track them down and you can see for yourselves and can read the big, because sometimes I'll take a quote from a larger piece and you might want to see the larger piece. So I tried to do that to be academically honest and straightforward. The last thing I will say is every book for me is very personal. This idea is it's business, it's not personal. That's not me. Everything is personal because I'm the one doing it. So for me, this is very much autobiographical, as it is a piece of my intellectual thinking and my contribution to the greater community that I hope is of benefit. And I guess that's part of my style, is that when I teach and when I speak and when I write, I am personal. And I'm trying to show you that I'm not trying to hide something, or I'm not trying to act like something that I'm not, but this is I believe, a realistic and accurate representation of me, or part of me at least, let's say. And that's why I usually, in this case, I began with this personal anecdote, which I'll read to you to conclude the video, just like I did with In Search of Mindfulness. And it seems that I was reflecting on that, and that was not planned, by the way, but I realize now that I've had these two books back to back, I do realize that that's my style, and I wanted to highlight, yes, that is my style. And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it's honest, at least it's me. That's how I am, and I'm personal. And I don't want to speak to you, or I don't want to write to you in an abstract kind of ideal sense, but I want to show you how I'm getting at these, conclusions and these understandings from my own personal journey. I think it's important for you to understand my journey as much as you understand what I'm trying to argue in this book. And I think that is in line with the Islamic tradition, because we have the biographies of the great ulama. Many of the ulama, the most famous, or one of the most famous, being Imam Asyuti and Imam al-Ghazali, they wrote their own autobiographies for exactly that reason. And I have a video from a couple of weeks ago, or a month or whatever ago, that like I probably would say, it depends what day you ask me of the week, but today if you ask me what's my favorite book, it's going to be Imam al-Ghazali's Al-Munqidh min al-Dalal, A Deliverance from Error, his autobiography, which I read every year around between the two Eids, sort of, when I read, I tend to find the time to read that book. Sometimes I can read it in just one day. It's not that long. I think that the reason I write that way is that I'm kind of reflecting on the spot, this was not pre-planned, is that when I was a young man and I read that book for the first time, it was so impactful, that such a great mind, this is how he got there, that I guess in my subconscious I was like, I want to be like that. So my personal journey at how I'm coming to these arguments, I think, is part of how I want to share the information. So I keep saying the last thing. This is the last thing before I'll read to you the opening couple paragraphs. I wanted to talk to you about the artwork. I found a Muslim artist online, Sister Salwa Najm, who the reason I found her is because she makes these hijra maps that look like they're from the Lord of the Rings. So they're very Tolkien style hijra maps. Islam and Tolkien. I end with a quote from Tolkien. So I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So when I was thinking of what art to put for the gate to Medina, I reached out to her, and I want to say that it was a pleasure to work with her, because she's extremely professional and very receptive to the ideas, very generous with her suggestions, very capable with the artwork. And I told her, look, it doesn't have to be historically accurate, but we want the green dome, and we want the gate to the green dome. And you'll notice up here, there's this little, I don't know if it's going to show up, but there's like a little window. Maybe it's a little bit blurry, but there's a window here that's on the green dome. And there's a story behind that, that after the passing of the Prophet ﷺ, there was a drought, and the companions went to Sayyidah Aisha, radiallahu anha, his wife, to complain. So she said, expose the ceiling above the grave of the Prophet ﷺ. And they did that, and it started to rain. So every time they build a new dome over the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, they make sure that there is that window. So Beneath this dome is another dome and another dome, till you get down to the earth where the physical body of the Prophet ﷺ is resting. And there's no direct ceiling between that spot and the heavens. And I told her that detail is very important. So it's lovely cover. I love this artwork. She sent me the original artwork. Unfortunately, it's not here with me now as I'm recording it somewhere else. But when I get to it and I'm reunited with it, I'll share it with you. So that's a little bit about my journey. Now, without further ado, let me read for you just the opening paragraphs of how the book begins. Hopefully that will whet the appetite and encourage you to want to read the book. So this is how I begin today. It was a scene I witnessed hundreds of times. I would leave my Cairo flat in the Mohendesin suburb shortly after Fajr prayer and head towards the al-Azhar mosque in the old part of the city, a drive that normally takes about 30 to 45 minutes. In the early morning, the city is surprisingly empty, but by the time I drive through the outer gates of the ancient seminary, the hustle and bustle starts. Just as the ambient sound of horns, people, markets, haggling, and the rest pick up, I quickly duck into the sanctuary of the mosque. The thick, high walls of al-Azhar provide the needed shade from the Egyptian sun, especially in the summer months, and insulation against the sounds of the outside world. As the heat of the day increases, I, like so many of the other students, find relief in the shade. I greet the mosque with the customary 2 units of prayer, then sit against the wall, take out my books to review my lessons. The goal of this ritual is to wait for the Mufti glide. A short while later, and without any warning, Egypt's Grand Mufti emerges from one of the side entrances. There is no way to anticipate when this will happen. He simply appears and walks rapidly. His jurist robe is without buttons, so it is swung open by the pace of his gait. It drops just beneath his ankle but slightly above the floor. You cannot see his feet nor his knees as they bend when he walks. Like something out of fantasy, he simply glides swiftly from the entrance on one side of the mosque to the schoolhouse, Riwaq, on the other side, where he teaches. Moths to a flame, the students encamped in the shaded area of the mosque quickly gather their books and run towards the Mufti, hoping to have the blessing of kissing his hand. There are so many of us that his hand remains extended as the students genuflect to kiss it. However, he remains stern with his glance firmly fixed in front of him, as if guiding his course and paying no attention to the supplicants. As quickly as he enters, so too does he duck into the Ottoman schoolhouse on the far side of the mosque, takes his place upon the teaching chair. He grabs the book placed next to him, opens it, and says, Assalamu alaikum. And with that, I'll also tell you, Assalamu alaikum. I'll talk to you soon. Be well.